So there's been a rush of negotiations to end Russia's war in Ukraine. It began when President Trump first met with Vladimir Putin Friday. Then it continued a few days later with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European heads of state right down the street at the White House.
So that latter meeting largely positive, right? America, its allies, sort of laying the groundwork for some security guarantees for Ukraine, but there's still a lot of work to be done in order to reach a peace agreement, which we know President Trump wants. Drew Petrimo always has his eyes and ears on everything going on in Washington. He is here this morning yet again with the very latest. Where do things stand? What are the next steps?
Well, so there's a lot of talk of a meeting between Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Vladimir Putin. Trump has been kind of promoting the idea that he's facilitating this meeting. He's kind of urging them to get together and continue on the road to peace talks. But while Zelenskyy has said that he's willing to have this meeting without any preconditions, we haven't heard a commitment from the Kremlin or from Vladimir Putin. And the truth is, there are some impediments to that, namely that one of the main mantras of the Kremlin and of Putin during this entire war is that Zelenskyy is illegitimate, that he has been committing genocide on Russian-speaking population of Ukraine, which is not true. But the propaganda being put out by Russian state media and being spread all over the world really is that he's an illegitimate president. And so the notion that he would sit down with him for some sort of negotiation that is not a capitulation on the part of Ukraine is, difficult to imagine.
Well, not only that, but after the European leaders met with President Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy, they're promising to back Ukraine up. We all know Russia doesn't want any sort of NATO troops, and they're not NATO, but they're NATO countries, right? If they ever put people in there, that would be problematic for him.
Well, what exactly are these would be some sort of military presence on the ground to prevent further Russian incursion. That is a red line for Vladimir Putin, so he says. He doesn't want any NATO troops there. There's some talk of maybe having troops under their own country's banner with American air support, but those details are going to have to be worked out in any negotiation and would probably have to involve a huge ceding of land on the part of Ukraine. That could be a red line for the Ukrainians.
So President Trump was asked about this on Tuesday about, whether U.S. troops could be actually on the ground in Ukraine. He was non-committal at the time. But here's what he said, and then after that sound, I want to listen to Caroline Levitt as well.
They're right there. So they have to, 6 seconds? It's a different kind of a thing for them. When it comes to security, they're willing to put people on the ground. We're willing to help them with things, especially probably if you could talk about by air, because nobody has the kind of stuff we have. Really, they don't have. But I don't think it's going to be a problem.
The president has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies. The president understands security guarantees are crucially important to ensure a lasting peace, and he has directed his national security team to coordinate with our friends in Europe and also to continue to cooperate and discuss these matters with Ukraine and Russia as well.
But it appears even those security guarantees are an impediment to even get Vladimir Putin to the table with Zelenskyy.
Yeah, there's a huge effort right now going on across the Atlantic to try to coordinate what exactly these security guarantees would be. Secretary of State Marco Rubio involved, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General Dan Kane also involved in these discussions. But again, exactly what the mix of potential troops on the ground, U.S. air support is going to be, both granting the level of security that Ukraine wants and also acceptable to Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin, is a very difficult balance to strike.
In fact, we have presence tracking the cessation of fighting and armaments. So that is that's one thing, a lot, actually.
Yeah, well,
it's a lot.
One of the things that make this so difficult is, as part of the peace agreement that Vladimir Putin has put on the table, would be ceding this area of the Donbass that right now Russia controls a large portion of it, but there's a key part of it that is still under Ukrainian control, and it contains some of Ukraine's best defenses. It's on the high ground. If Ukraine were to cede that area and fall back, then to think that Europeans and Americans would be able to provide the type of military support to protect the rest of the country would be extremely difficult, because you're giving up your best military positions and leaving any potential European force with American air support extremely vulnerable.
All right. Drew, thank you very much. We'll talk to you next hour more about
Drew.
this very important subject.